Hello, I'm Tom Abdenour, certified athletic trainer, and I'm proud to be chatting with you today through the Business of Athletic Training Academy. My experiences in leadership, we will draw from a variety of backgrounds at the collegiate and professional team level. But before we go on, I just want to reassure you that I have no financial conflict with regard to this presentation and anything else that I've done in my profession or currently have going. So again, thank you for the opportunity. To the people at BOAT, thank you for joining us. And we hope that you can enhance your understandings of leadership and expand your horizons. The objectives of our presentation with regard to future leaders are pretty straightforward and simple. We want to review the components of what an athletic trainer leader is. We want to define the elements of leadership. And we look at some of the contemporary workplace concerns in society that will challenge the athletic trainer in this day and age. But before we go on and talk about what is leadership, let's talk about the definition of what is a leader. We need to determine basics of that before we get into the leadership. Let's talk about the components of a leader. And I know many of you are, and many of you have experienced opportunities up close and personal with various leaders in your world. In many cases, this could be a leader of someone that's based on employment designation, someone who's worked their way up the ladder, long-term member of the group, the elder, so to speak. It could be based on volunteerism. You know, who wants to do this project? And someone raises their hand, congratulations, you're gonna lead us along the way. And then within our profession, we'll talk about the usual and customary definitions of leadership. But again, keep in mind, it's not always the boss. It's not always the elders. It's not always the ones that you think of. So let's keep an open mind with regard to what leadership in athletic training is. Before we go into leadership within our group, let's talk about a little bit about characteristics of leaders. And as a sports fan, grew up in Detroit, I recognize the Detroit Tigers that Sparky Anderson won the 1984 World Series with. We have Dawn Staley, who's an extremely accomplished coach, athlete in women's basketball. She's now at the University of South Carolina. She has won at every level from the standpoint of as a player, as an Olympian, as a collegiate. She's won at 2 colleges and universities. She's amazing. And again, she's a leader amongst women and someone who's a tremendous role model also for the athletes that she has. And then maybe one of the most iconic faces of leadership in the NFL, Tom Landry. There's no one that needs to define, no one defines leadership in a sense better than that look on the sidelines with that hat. And we all know what he means business in many ways. But again, many different characteristics of what a leader is all about. In our profession, sometimes we have to be strong like an oak tree and sway like a palm. And basically what that means is that oak tree, we know that sucker is going to be pretty strong with regard to life in a storm. There's bad weather coming through. That oak is that's going to withstand the rough winds that are accompanying stormy weather. And in turn, a palm tree is going to also withstand the winds by swaying in the breeze. Nothing's going to get to it. It's going to handle everything in its own ways. So again, in the tough days that we have in the athletic training room or on the sidelines or in the clinic or in the research lab, we have to be strong like an oak and sway like a palm. And the ones who come to rise to the top, those are our leaders. The definition, the textbook definition, let's say, of an athletic trainer as a leader comes in many cases. First off, it could be the boss, all right? But again, by our current contemporary standards, the boss is a lot more than just the head athletic trainer. We've got people in our profession who are chancellors, provosts, presidents of universities, vice presidents of athletic medicine for professional teams. Unlike the past, we've got folks in our profession who are department chairs, and we've got many at the collegiate level that are a senior associate athletic director, a divisional associate athletic director, whatever the term is, we've moved up into administration. And like I said, in some cases, the highest of the heights. On the other hand, I don't want to demean us, but it's okay just to be an athletic trainer. It's okay just to be the head athletic trainer, oversee your staff, maybe oversee your physicians. You know, there's always that debatable point if we're their boss or not. You ask them, they'll tell you that we are. but also from the standpoint of being the boss or oversee athletic training students, interns, young professionals, things like that. The athletic trainer is a mentor. All right. The more formal definition of mentoring is with students, and that could theoretically be the role of the preceptor in a more formal classroom mentor-mentee type of relationship. And again, our role there is to help mold the minds of our best and brightest and set examples for them and open their brains and pour everything we know into them. Mentorship does not stop just because of graduation. Our young professionals also benefit from the mentorship of a leader. Again, we want to continually challenge them to grow professionally, expand their horizons, and continue to take up the mantles that we've left them, that we older folks have left them for them to grow with. And then we've got the mentor of the old guard, and this could be the governance or the committee leaderships that impact our profession, the volunteers that are doing the behind the scenes work to make us all better. And their work encourages involvement for the greater good. There's no question of that. We could also have the athletic trainer advisor, a leader who's an advisor. And again, we think of advisor more of an academic counseling type of situation. It's far more than that. We've all been in that situation where particularly a young athlete comes up to us in their time of physical need. You know, they've just gotten some devastating news from a physician. They're not certain how to handle it. What type of surgery should I have for my torn ACL? They need to have that honest conversation to make the biggest decision at that point in their life. And they know that they can trust us to give them the advice that they need. And then a little closer to home, with regard to the students or the young professionals that we mentor, there's a big push right now as far as advanced degrees, terminal degrees. Should I get my PhD? Should I get a DAT? Should I go back to school? Should I expand my horizons in other areas? And so again, advising from that standpoint, we are looked to our leadership for that. Then other career decisions for those who are aspiring to move up a ladder. How do I go from Division II to Division I? Or how do I go to a high school to the pros? You know, those sorts of things. Or we've got several who are making life decisions. How do I get out of this particular setting? Out of athletic training completely? I hope not. But again, they're looking to us for advice. They're also people are looking to us as the organizers. We are far more organized, or at least it seems, than a lot of people that we work with, and particularly at the intercollegiate or professional level. They know that they can rely on us. How many times have we gotten that phone call? What time is practice? Or from the athlete who wants to duck away from practice. Can you call the coach and tell them I won't be there? Again, maybe not the best examples of how we interact, but those people are, again, looking to us for the organizational skills that we have and the ability to step up to the plate. Again, in the life and death emergency, or even the bad injury during practice, they yell, trainer. They know that we're going to be there and our leadership is going to step up because of what we've done with regard to an emergency action plan. They know we are organized, rehearsed, and ready to go. We are trusted. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we're the first one in and the last one out. We've got some great trailblazers in our profession also. We have all stood on the shoulders of people like Moose Deddy and Gail Weldon. For the young members of our audience that are not familiar with Moose, he's the father of knee sleeves. It goes way back in the days when Moose was the head athletic trainer of the Philadelphia Eagles and started Pro Orthopedics at their home in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and then moved down to Tucson, where Jerry Deddy, his son, has shepherded that business and is an industry leader. Gail Weldon was taken from us far too early in her life. She was the first female athletic trainer hired by the USOC. She was at UCLA, and this was still in a day when we had separated athletic training rooms. We had a men's athletic training room and a women's athletic training room. But Gail somehow or another seemed to bridge all of those gaps. And certainly in many ways, she didn't break the glass ceiling all the way. She certainly cracked it pretty good. There's no question of that. And she was the first female inducted into the Hall of Fame for our profession. We are also looked at as visionaries, and more and more and more. We have the bench research for the guys and gals in the labs. They're the background, they're the bedrock of our evidence-based practice. So it's through their ideas when they can't sleep at night, when they're wondering, hey, what about building a better mousetrap? What about this? What about that? And it's those types of ideas that we all benefit from. And again, we've seen advances in the DAT programs through the researchers that we have in the various academic institutions. Something close to my heart is the clinical research. And again, the visionaries that we have with that, who look at what's going on in labs, say, okay, fine, if we tweak this, if we adjust this, or if we look at something a little bit differently, then maybe we can come up with a better solution for a problem. And again, this is where the rubber meets the road with regard to evidence-based theory and typical day-to-day athletic training practice. For those who are interested in trying to take into the areas of research a little bit more, but are a clinician and just not certain how to do it, go back to your institutions, find a researcher that you can link up with. And from that standpoint, maybe you can develop a program or an idea that you can build on, and they can help. They can help with some of the logistic things like the IRB application or guide you with regard to lit research. And in turn, we all have a little, epidemiologist in us. And this is an opportunity for you to take advantage of that. And then you can lead in that research along the way. And then the end result of blending all this together is the NATA position statements. And that's something that helps all of us in every level of our profession. And something else that's near and dear to my heart is the athletic trainer who's a volunteer. We think of volunteerism, we think of governance. All right, how about those committees that are going to make us a better profession, set the policy for the future, realize where we've been in the past and where we're going, and what might be down the road 5 years from now that we have absolutely no idea about now, but how can we prepare for things like that? Obviously, we've got opportunities at the national level, as well as the district, the state, and even more so local levels. There's some large metropolitan areas that have strong athletic trainer associations within their communities. And again, we have our strategic partners, the NATA, the Research and Education Foundation, the CADE, and the Board of Certification. Now, the theories of leadership, there are many. And there's all sorts of different parts of this mosaic that are together. And it all adds up to the mathematical formula of leadership. I have to confess, I don't know who Warren Bennis is, but he's got a couple of pretty good points here. So leaders are the people who do the right thing. Managers are the people who do things right. And again, there's a lot to unpack with regard to that. Basically, it means leaders allow the people who they are leading to have some level of autonomy. They encourage some thinking, independent thinking. They want you to go on and move forward. They're not going to micromanage anything that's unnecessary. Managers, they just want to stay on top of you and make sure that the widgets get done correctly. Whereas the leaders are going to give you some latitude and allow an individual to have some creativity along the way. And then this other quote here is pretty interesting. And we'll get into that. And you look at it, and especially in our world of sports, that people think that leaders are born. That's not necessarily the case. As a biology major, I don't recall a genetic trait for leadership. But again, that was a long time ago, so maybe things have changed. But leaders are made rather than born. We all have a certain genetic background with regard to, like I said, charisma or quality, the qualities of that. But we'll talk about some things here as far as some common terms or commonalities of the common denominator, shall we say, of leadership. In our world of healthcare, the concept that typically seems to be we're going to promote the most technically skilled people. We're going to maybe offer leadership positions to the ones who've been around the longest, things like that. But technically skilled person may not have those intangible qualities of a leader that we all can identify with. Again, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes, but that's not always the case. Just because they're the best at something doesn't make them the best leader. A case in point is this guy. Magic Johnson certainly was a technically skilled practitioner, an extremely skilled practitioner. There's nothing on a basketball court and a basketball that he couldn't do. And a lot of times he did them against us when I was with the Golden State Warriors. Irvin Johnson was a 5-time NBA champion, 3-time MVP of the NBA. He's on the original Dream Team, College Player of the Year, Basketball Hall of Fame. The list probably goes on. However, when it came down to coaching, he was not nearly as successful in the short stint that he had when he finished the Lakers season on the bench 1 year as a coach. A lot of different reasons for a coach to go 5-11, and he saw them all. And if he'd had a more full year with training camp and all sorts of different reasons, maybe he would have done that better, or maybe not. But that does not take anything away from the fact that he's a very skilled practitioner of basketball. Leadership versus management. Again, like I said, the leader is someone who wants to encourage his people to think about things independently. And the task at hand and the workers' feelings, the workers' thoughts, the workers' input, they're all equally together important. Whereas the manager looks at things in a much more narrow focus. Finishing the job is more important. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. There's no warm and fuzzy sometimes, and we've all had dealings with this right now, where we've had a leader, we've had someone in a position of leadership who might not be the most outgoing, might not be the most friendly, and may be very focused on just getting things finished. Again, from our standpoint within athletic training, sometimes we need to be a little less of that, a little bit more of a leader, particularly when it comes to things like work-life balance. I've heard stories of young professionals or people on staffs who have asked to have a weekend off in order to go to a wedding or in order to go to a christening or for an elder's birthday and be told, no, you can't do it. You have to cover your team. Again, from the standpoint of a good leader, they'll sit down and figure out how we're going to skin this cat and make it happen so that we've got a very happy employee. The manager, on the other hand, is going to say, no, this is your responsibility. I don't really care. The traits of good leadership. Tony Dungy was an outstanding football player and coach, a Super Bowl champion, and does a pretty good job as an analyst on television if he's still on. But the secret to success basically talks about how we make lives better for the people that we work with. In this case, there's an NBA-ism that would apply to this very easily, and that is this: you got to love them all. And it's basically, you need to take your people, you need to treat them respectfully, and the golden rule applies: treat others as you'd like to be treated. We all learned it in kindergarten. And that is so important, that you interact with people in a very positive way, and the good leaders know how to do that. It's not always peaches and cream out there. Sometimes leadership is like playing whack-a-mole. You solve one problem and 3 others pop up. We just did a survey of athletic trainers with regard to coronavirus and how they're preparing, or how they were prepared to come back during the pandemic. And there was a general theme along the way that basically, whenever there was one question answered, that prompted 5 more questions to be asked. So again, those are the challenges in leadership that we have, that our friend here is having a good time at the arcade trying to win that whack-a-mole game, but that's what it's like sometimes. Now, it's not always easy. The road's not always smooth. So we do have some challenges for the athletic trainer leader. All right. And some of the challenges might be people that don't interact well with other people. We can get down nitty gritty and say they don't play well in the stand box. On the other hand, I could just say that sometimes people are not necessarily people persons, shall we say. And sometimes there's a not good mix between a staff member and the supervisor, or a staff member and an athletic training student. And that could challenge the person who's at the top of the pyramid. Secondly, with regard to the things that could challenge the athletic trainer leader, could be sexual harassment issues, bullying, or any other kind of harassment problem. Discrimination still rears its ugly head. And then there could be other conflict by many other sources that could be those little moles that keep popping up in the whack-a-mole game. In the NBA, if there was any one person that you could say embodies exemplary leadership, it's Pat Riley. Guy who's won 5 NBA championships, either as a coach, I guess as a coach or general manager, executive of the year, that he could win every year. And he coined the term the disease of me, which is so appropriate and so accurate. It says right there, the most difficult thing for individuals to do when they want to be part of the team is to sacrifice. It's much easier to be selfish than to sacrifice. And I know if you just took a minute to reflect, you would know, you could identify someone that you've crossed paths with that has the disease of me. Unfortunately, there's no CPT code. It's not covered by Blue Cross, Affordable Care Act, Medicare, Social Security. It's not covered by any of those. And, but it's there. So we break down the disease of me this way: the chronic feelings of underappreciation. Basically, they're just looking at themselves. They're the type of people who we always kidded about it in baseball. You know, somebody gets a base hit, and by the time they go from home to first base, they'll have a new batting average figured out. Or the one who loses the game but did well in the process. Hey, you know, I did okay. The ones who feel like they're being cheated out of their rightful share. You know, hey, everybody wants to get credit for doing a good job, but the ones who take it to the extreme, those are the problems. Within a group, it's sometimes we devolve back to junior high. And before you know it, we're in the junior high lunchroom where you can sit at my desk or my table, but you can't. And that certainly does not bode well, and certainly is a problem for a leader to solve. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. But again, when you've got people like this, that's part of it. Again, you've got feelings of frustration when the team wins. Team has a big win, and we've all seen this. You've got a great win, and there's someone moping in the corner over there. Well, how come you're not celebrating this tremendous day that we had? Well, you know, I did lousy, or I didn't get enough opportunity, or whatever. Again, from the standpoint of leadership within the athletic training committee or community, you know, that's hard to take care of also. That's a challenge to the whole group that sometimes the leader has to solve. And then when someone who just wants to do things just to try to draw the spotlight to themselves, that's hard too. So again, how do you as a leader solve all of these? And again, the bottom line is that the person who's selfish resents the competence and success of another. And how you solve that, that's a challenge. That's a tough one, and hope we give you a few tools to help address that. Harassment. By definition, unwelcome or unwanted conduct. And it could be sexual harassment, it could be bullying, it could be just generally not making people feel welcome. The hostile workplace environment is something that's a term from the 80s and 90s, but certainly makes a lot of sense. So if someone comes to you with that, you're going to have a tough situation to work yourself through. Sex for favor, the quid pro quo for sexual harassment, that is definitely there also. Again, we'd like to think not, but again, these could be problems that the athletic trainer leader has to deal with. It could be coming from a student, it could be coming from a staff member. The adverse effects of harassment, just in general, just kind of kills the whole mood of everybody. Morale goes down. There's a stigma associated with the people who cause the problems. It could be a stigma on the leader for seemingly not solving it. So those are the things that just kind of, like I said, are just not good overall. And then there's also the potential for significant legal fees or settlements that could be brought upon. In our world, in the workplace, all right, there's some textbook definitions of what bullying is like. And, you know, this is something that has come out. We all know what it's like. It goes back to our times in grade school. But again, it could be that psychological violence. It could be the harassment. It could be picked on. It could be the emotional abuse. It could be, again, people say, well, they're just a difficult person, or they're just not civil. They're just not nice. You know, you have to cut them some slack because they don't know what they're doing, or that's just him. Well, that's just not good enough anymore. This needs to be solved. Back when we were kids, the phrase was, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Nowadays, sticks and stones will never hurt me, but they might break your bank account and cost you your job. So again, this is where people have to be careful. And as a leader, if you see this, you have to snuff it out immediately. I would have never, ever thought that two big burly football players like this would have got involved in a bullying situation. It just goes so counterintuitive to what the nature of football is all about. But it happened, and it trapped one of our colleagues also. From the standpoint of Kevin O'Neill, who was with the Miami Dolphins, when he was asked about the situation in Miami in the Jonathan Martin case, there were things that he stuck to his principles with regard to HIPAA information, and he was not going to compromise. And it ended up costing him significantly. And but this is how he managed it, and he has held his head high since then, because again, he did the right thing the right way, and others didn't like it, and it all worked out in the long run from him. But I know that there are there's a lot of lost sleep and a lot of angst and anguish. But again, doing the right thing the right way was the best attack or best approach that Kevin had, and like I said, it all worked out for him in the long run. Discrimination. Now, this sign goes back to something from a dark corner of our society many, many years ago. However, just the concept of discrimination is still prevalent now, both in the workplace and society in general. Basically, it's any adverse employment action in our world taken on the basis of a protected characteristic. And the protected classes are race, creed, color, sexual orientation, pregnancy, or gender, basically. And if someone's punished, or if there's a negative evaluation, or there's a refusal to hire or promote just because of any of those protected classes are being violated, that's discrimination. And for those of us in a leadership position with regard to managing people or hiring, we need to keep this in mind. And this is something that we need to avoid at all accounts. Again, much like with the harassment and the bullying, discrimination is obvious to people. They sense it. You can't fool people on stuff like this. All right, so you're going to end up with the low morale. The word gets out that you're not going to be able to recruit good employees or new employees. Could be complications with regard to your job. Could be complications with regard to legal parameters. Here's a situation involving one of our colleagues that was denied a promotion because they basically came out and said that they wanted to hire a male athletic trainer instead of a female. So that was pretty much straightforward. And she ended up getting some kind of a settlement. And but again, it's probably not what she wanted. She just wanted to do her job. And this was the only resolution to it. But again, we can't make decisions that are not, we can't make decisions, we can't put ourselves into a position to make this type of decision. That's a bad call. And again, going back to treating people well. This is a popular term right now: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because again, as we grow as a society, sometimes we have to look into the rearview mirror. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has been part of our DNA since day one. It's basically in our manifesto, it says that we will treat as an advocate for my patient's best medical interest. All right, I will act with integrity, provide thoughtful and compassionate healthcare, always respecting the rights, welfare, and dignity of others. Doesn't get any more plain or simple than that. So these concepts here are the way many of us, I'm sure, were brought up in our profession. All right, there's President Lindley with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion in our profession. And we'll just kind of just let his words speak, because I couldn't summarize it any better than he did. More broadly, how might approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion enhance our ability as a profession to advance critical strategic NATA initiatives, such as athletic trainers in every secondary school, and elevating awareness of athletic trainers' role in work life and sport? Thriving professions and associations are gaining greater and more action-oriented appreciation for the paramount role that diversity, equity, and inclusion plays in their continued success as an organization. Again, we want to have that big tent. We want to have everyone in. We want to make everyone feel comfortable and welcome. and we're a better profession for it. These are some of my friends that personify that term athletic training diversity. And there's a great quote here that I found on the internet from some kind of a Muslim background, but it summarizes it pretty well. A lot of different flowers make a bouquet. In this case, it's a beautiful bouquet. We've got Lynn Nakagawa from the University of Hawaii, Renee Chevis from Central Michigan, Hazel Ando from the Santa Barbara area, and Alejandro Merriman from the Los Angeles area. A combination of Asian Americans, Black Americans, and Hispanic Latinx Americans, all with the same concept of treating giving the best health care that they can for their athletes, their patients. Equity. I don't know how many of you have had the privilege of Clafs and Arnheim as part of your background. This is the 3rd edition. My brother is an athletic trainer, a couple of years older than me. He had the 2nd edition, but it goes back to this in the 70s, the sense of fair play. An athletic trainer cannot allow himself discriminatory in his treatment of athletes. All should be treated on an equal basis, regardless of race, color, or creed. A sense of fair play and justice goes a long way toward establishing harmonious relationships, and it most certainly does. Again, something that you'll hear along the way is that it's, like I said, the NBA-ism we had before was you got to love them all. And again, going back to the time that our profession was just getting started, that we recognized that everyone should be treated equally. Everyone should be treated well and with dignity and respect. Inclusion is the last of the DEI triumvirate, and that's Lindsay McLean, a very good friend of mine and someone who I respect as one of my elders. And that's a little bit of his personal collection right there. Lindsay is most well known from being from the University of Michigan and the San Francisco 49ers. He's the father of our athletic training certification. That started in the late 60s when he reached out to Pinky Newell at Purdue University, and because he saw someone on the sidelines across from him that wasn't qualified to be an athletic trainer. So Lindsay reached out to Pinky and said, hey, we need to do something about this. And Pinky said, you know what, you're absolutely right. We do, and you will. So Lindsay got the certification process started with in a Zonas tape box in his athletic training room at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And from there, we've got what we've got right now. The foundation has a scholarship named in Lindsay's honor. He's a member of our Hall of Fame, Tim Karen Award recipient, 5 Super Bowl champions, and he's a gay man. And there's a great story on ESPN.com about the healer. And that's when Lindsay acknowledged his background in a story. And it was very interesting. And this was about 25 years ago, and I've talked to him about it along the way. And every once in a while, he still gets a phone call or a letter from one of our colleagues that's a member of the LGBTQ community and says, hey, what about this or what about that? So again, the personification of inclusion within our profession. Sometimes life's not always smooth and easy. There's a very good chance in the Abdenour household that there's going to be a Law and Order episode on somewhere. And in the world of leadership, we'll refer to this as conflict and resolution. One of the classic NBA fights was during the playoffs in the early 90s between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks. And that led to a variety of rule changes with regard to player altercations. But this was, like I said, during a playoff game. But you see the blue arrow down there? That's Jeff Van Gundy, the head coach of the Knicks, trying to hang on to, could be either Alonzo, it looks like it's Alonzo Mourning's ankle and leg. Jeff's about 5'8", and Alonzo's about 6'10", and outweighs Jeff probably by 100 pounds, and got Charles Oakley coming right there too. But again, they had a serious disagreement or an argument, to say the least. And this was definitely protracted by that met all the parameters of what a conflict is all about. More recently, we've had a cross between college football and the Constitution. Give me life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and college football during a pandemic. And the conflict that our colleagues and anyone associated with college football was will we return football during the pandemic of 2020? And it says right there, an article from ESPN, that a group of parents went to the Big Ten headquarters and protested that thou shalt not take college football away from us. So how do we, as athletic trainers, involve ourselves into these discussions? People are going to look to us for leadership with regard to the medical health care. We're there on the front lines. We are the personification of sports medicine. And how are we going to involve ourselves into solving these things? So that's an example of where we are in on maybe a bigger stage. We've had athletic trainers who have gone from being the head athletic trainer to all of a sudden finding themselves on university committees with regard to how to handle the pandemic and the return to play and so on and so forth. So again, more evidence of leadership. But the everyday stuff, these are the conflicts that we've all seen. All right. For those of us who have been on the competitive side of things, in the traditional setting, we've all dealt with coaches who said, what do you mean that guy can't play? Are you kidding? I played with something far worse than that. We've all heard that. Or the athlete who said, why won't you let me play? Put it all on the decision. Well, you haven't met the criteria to return. They don't understand it or they don't want to hear about it. Again, a more contemporary spin on conflict was it's our child's right to play. Well, maybe it is, but you haven't met the concussion protocol yet. All right. And the conflict that we have with ourselves sometimes with regard to the work balance. Again, this is an exaggeration of how we have to work to cover that outdoor ping pong tournament in the rain, for the 50th straight weekend. Work-life balance is a situation that we do have conflict in, and we do need to have a personal resolution as to what works best for us. And then sometimes we have conflicts within the staff. Here's a mythical strength coach who said, you mean I can't hire my non-qualified, non-credentialed and unqualified nephew-in-law as our Olympic lifting coach just because he's a steroid freak? No, you really shouldn't hire that person. That's not a good choice. And we all know, any of us who've been around the block a little bit, understand that sometimes hiring decisions are made based on relationships rather than based on qualifications. And in this case, could cause difficulties for us. And somehow or another, we get right to the middle of something like this, particularly if it is someone like a strength coach or a fitness person that's not qualified that we have to cover for. So again, we find ourselves jammed up on that. We have to resolve those conflicts somehow. Many strategies that those in leadership understand. We start with the competing aspect. Use your power and influence to get your way. Just bully yourself. I guess that's not the right word, but just force yourself into solving the problem. Okay? Try to come up with something that makes everybody kind of happy. All right? Or just give in. Historically, Neville Chamberlain gave in to Adolf Hitler, and before you know it, we had World War II. So sometimes if you just give in and just turn your back, you could end up with a bigger problem. We are all guilty of procrastination at times. So I put off today that you could put off until tomorrow. You just keep kicking it down the road. I like music, so we'll invoke the Rolling Stones here. You can't always get what you want, but if you try real hard, you'll get what you need. And so how can you resolve the conflict? By coming up with some kind of compromise where you sort of accomplish what you want to do. It may not be perfect, it may not be the best, but it's still an improvement on where you were. And again, how do we get that done? And then the last is the kumbaya moment where everybody wins. And that's probably the least likely at times, but again, come up with the strategy, and you could have different situations that you're confronted with. And sometimes one strategy might work better than the other. I guess I wouldn't recommend appeasing someone or avoiding it, but you can come up with compromise, especially if you think it through and you've got good people around you that you can work through. Again, I don't know so much about pearls of wisdom that we can impart upon you, but as far as a little bit of a take-home message, we've got a few things here that might work. First off, leadership is all about the people. And anyone who followed the Golden State Warriors in the early 90s recognizes this is Run TMC. That's Tim Hardaway with Chris Mullin in the middle, and then Mitch Richmond. Three of my very good friends, had the true pleasure of working with when they played in the league, played for us with the Warriors. And You know, those guys were just a delight to watch grow as people. And truly believe that the winning is nice, but truly seeing people grow as professionals, grow as individuals, and and still stay in contact and have friendships with them, that's even nicer. So again, being a leader, ingratiate yourself with the people that you work with. Um, it's important to get to know them on a personal basis and get to know their families a bit, get to understand them and what makes them happy, and it's the little things in life that you can do. And for every 10 things that we hear, for every 10 times we hear no, we hear one time yes, that balances it all out. The important components, again, we're going to rely on my hometown Detroit roots here and invoked Aretha with regard to her respect. People are always willing to follow the leader who's accessible, treats people with dignity, and can actually acknowledge when they did something that was wrong or they screwed up. Someone who deals with conflict rather than just kick it down the road or appease someone. Listening is extremely important. And the flip side of listening is communicating. We live in such a communicative world right now where it's text, it's emails, it's social media, it's actually picking up the phone and calling someone or walking down to their office and having a personal conversation. But whatever it is, as long as you can communicate that well. Um, within our areas of leadership, part of this communication is dealing with coaches along the way in the traditional setting. And that could be a daily injury report, which I know sometimes is easier to give than others. But at the end of the day, at the end of the season, you'll be respected for conveying that information. It could be communicating with a physician, communicating with administrators. Again, people who appreciate information that comes their way. That's all important. All right. Now, how do you as an aspiring leader get started? Like I said, how do you dip your toe into that water? What makes sense? What's appealing to you? You know, in many cases, you can't always go from the number 3 person on the staff to being the leader, or you're not going to be instantaneously an elder to think that you qualify that way. So how are you going to dip your toe into the water of leadership? Try to volunteer from some committees in our profession. And I know it's hard because there's a lot of people that want to do it, and there's only so many chances. But again, don't shoot for the stars at the national level. Start with something at the local community level. Again, I know, for example, in Houston, they've got the Greater Houston Athletic Trainers Association, and I'm sure there are others. Here in California, we have our state broken down into 6 regions. So if there's something at the state region level that you can start with, things like that would be good. That gets you on the path, and then you can grow as a grow personally and grow professionally from that standpoint. Again, we've got our strategic partners, the NATA, the foundation, the CATI, and the Board of Certification. So if there's something along those lines that you can work with, I know the foundation has individual or district and local opportunities as ambassadors. Again, getting started from that standpoint. Try to publish and present. That's a big bias for me. And I know that that's hard. It's not easy. But find that idea. Like I said, we all got a little epidemiologist in us. And if there's some way that you can look for something, and then from there, grow that idea out. Feel free to reach back to a researcher at your institution, either where you went to school or some of the physicians that you're associated with, and you grow from there. I'll tell you, if you really want to impress somebody and kind of startle them, read an article in the Journal of Athletic Training, and then make a phone call to the lead author or an email, and just let them know, I read your paper, I found it fascinating. They'll be blown away because they never get phone calls or emails like that. So again, that would be a good start for you, just to try to break some ice with regard to entering that element of our profession. And the late, great Kobe Bryant, the most important thing is to try and inspire people so they can be great in whatever they want to do. And I think that sums up leadership in a great way. You want to tap into people's interest. You want to tap into their interpersonal relationships between the leader and the person being led. It doesn't have to be the boss. It doesn't have to be a mentor. It doesn't have to be a visionary. It can be any of those or all of those. But the point is, the people that you're working with, you want to let them know that, in the NBA term, that you love them all. because again, in the other NBA term, it's all about the people. Or as Tony Dungy said, it's reaching the people on an individual basis. That's how you move forward as a group. And that's what leadership is all about. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share some time with you today. And there's my email address down there. Please feel free to contact me. Let me know that we crossed our paths here together in this little presentation, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Again, thank you and have a good day.